Teach your children poetry. It opens the mind, lends grace to wisdom, said Sir Walter Scott. Sir Walter Scott was an 18th century Scottish poet, historian, novelist who went through the length and breadth of Scotland searching for ballads. Today, we study about Sir Walter Scott's brilliant piece of work, Lochinvar. Lochinvar is a literary ballad. What is a ballad? A ballad is a short narrative poem, often a poem that tells you of a story. Ballads were transmitted orally from generations to generations. Its musicality sort of made it singable. It had a dramatic theme. It spoke about love. It spoke about death. It spoke even about the supernatural. Literary ballad stems out from a ballad. It is an imitation of ballad in a narrative form. And the poem that we have today, Lochinvar, is a literary ballad. We have around 8 stanzas of 6 lines each within our poem. And as you will notice, you will understand that all of these stanzas end with the word Lochinvar. This reminds us that this person, Lochinvar, is the crux of the whole poem. This poem is also set in the age of chivalry. I'm sure you would have heard of the knights at arms, King Arthur and his round table filled with knights. Knights were a certain group of people who emerged during the Middle Ages, the medieval ages in England. They were supposed to be fully armed, mounted, fighting men. Men who were bound by honor codes of conduct, men who upheld values, men who upheld bravery, men who defended the poor, defended the weak, defended damsels in distress, men who defended the church, men who never went back from their word, men to whom honor meant everything. Today, our poem, Lochinvar, speaks about one such brilliant knight. And here is Lochinvar. This poem, Lochinvar, is about the love between two people, Lochinvar and the lady of his life, Ellen. Ellen is the shortened version of Helen, a Middle English name that was much common during those periods. The poem starts as this. Oh, young Lochinvar has come out of the west. Through all the wide border, his steed was the best. And save his good broadsword, he weapons had none. He rode all unarmed, he rode all alone, so faithful in love and so dauntless in war. There never was a knight like young Lochinvar. Oh, young Lochinvar has come out of the west. We have an introduction given to us right in the beginning of the poem, the way the poet wants us to imagine Lochinvar in this way. From out of the west, from the borders of Scotland moving on to England, from the west, you have Lochinvar riding on his steed. The second line is about the steed, the horse. Through all the wide border, Lochinvar's steed was the best. Lochinvar's horse was the best. Did he have weapons on him? Was he heavily armed? No, he did not need that, except for a good broad sword Lochinvar did not spot any weapons. He rode all unarmed. He rode all alone. What led him forward? He was faithful in love, and he was dauntless in war. The word dauntless means fearless. Dauntless means fearless. Faithful in love, dauntless in war. There never was a knight like young Lochinvar. This is the introduction of Lochinvar that we get in the beginning of the poem. We know by now that he is a skilled person, skilled in his broadsword. There is a purpose in this journey that he makes from the west down. And so we are here joining this journey with Lochinvar. Please read along with me. He stayed not for brake, he stopped not for stone. He swam the Escriva where ford there was none. But ere he alighted at the Netherby gate, the bride had consented, the gallant came late. For a laggard in love and a dastard in war was to wed the fair Ellen of brave Lochinvar. The plot moves very quickly here. He stayed not for the break. He stayed would mean stopped. 18th century work, so some of the words that we have are what we today call as obsolete words. They're also known as archaic words. Obsolete words and archaic words refers to words that were used at one point of time quite rampantly, but we don't use it anymore in today's vocabulary. These are words, many of these words you will find within the text. So what we have here is he stayed not for the brake, he stopped not for stone. He swam the Escriva where ford there was none. He did not stop for the bushes. Brake here would mean a place that is overgrown with bushes. He did not stop for anything. He did not stop over bushy areas. He did not stop over stony areas. He swam the Escriva. Escriva is another popular landmark of Scotland. He swam the Escriva where ford there was none. Ford here refers to a shallow place within the river where you could cross over on your horse. But here the Escriva does not seem to have a point where there is a ford. So Lochinvar, that does not stop Lochinvar from his journey. Nothing stops Lochinvar from reaching the Netherby Hall. He does not stop for brake. He does not stop for stone. He does not stop because there is no ford. Nothing can stop Lochinvar from making this journey to the Netherby Hall. But ere he alighted, ere is another obsolete word, and it means before. Unfortunately, even though he made this journey all the way from the west through mountains and plains and meadows, stopping for nothing, unfortunately, by the time he reached, before he alighted at the Netherby gate, alighted means stepped down from his horse before his destination was reached. But before he alighted at the Netherby gate, something had happened. The bride had consented. The bride had said yes to the wedding. She is out there at the Netherby Hall, and she has said yes to the wedding, to another bridegroom. The bride had consented. Consented would mean agreed. And the gallant came late. Gallant here would mean the hero. So Lochinvar, our dauntless, brave Lochinvar, Our gallant Lochinvar, whom nothing could stop, unfortunately, by the time he reaches here, the bride had consented and our hero came late. To whom did the bride consent to marry? For a laggard in love? For a laggard in love and a dastard at war. For a laggard in love and a dastard in war was to wed the fair Ellen of the brave Lochinvar. The fair Ellen of the brave Lochinvar. Unfortunately, the fair Ellen said yes to marry a man who was a laggard in love and a dastard in war. The word dastard means a coward. Someone who is afraid of everything. A coward. And a laggard would mean someone who is very, very lethargic. We call such a person a snail-paced person. Someone who does things very slowly. So this person, whoever she has consented to marry, is a laggard in love and a dastard in war. Unfortunately, Lochinvar did not reach the hall on time. Ellen consented to marry this man. Look into the lines again. So boldly he entered the Netherby hall, among bridesmen and kinsmen and brothers and all. Then spoke the bride's father, his hand on his sword. For the poor craven bridegroom said never a word. Oh, come ye in peace here, or come ye in war? Or to dance at our bridal, young Lord Lochinvar? Look at his voice. He fears that Lochinvar is here to do some mischief. Obviously, he has said no to the marriage between Lochinvar and Ellen. He has somehow forced Ellen to marry and to say yes to this man who she is about to marry. And seeing Lochinvar at the door, he has his hand on his sword and he says these words aloud. Have you come here in peace, Lochinvar? Or have you come here in war? Or, look at the mocking tone of his voice. Have you come to dance at our wedding feast? Bridal here would mean a wedding feast. Young Lochinvar, what is your purpose? Why are you here for? So Lochinvar, when he enters into the Netherby hall, this is the reception he gets. There are a lot of bridesmen there. There are a lot of kinsmen, relatives there. There are brothers of the bride there. Into this gathering, Lochinvar enters, and he is questioned right at the door by Ellen's father. What, Lochinvar, is your purpose in being here? And look at Lochinvar's answer. I long wooed your daughter. My suit you denied. Love swells like the Solway but ebbs like a tide. And now I'm come with this lost love of mine to lead but one measure, drink one cup of wine. There are maidens in Scotland more lovely by far that would gladly be bride to the young Lochinvar. Look into those brilliant response that he gives. What does he say there? I do agree that once long back I wooed your daughter. I wooed means I tried to get the love of your daughter. But then my suit you denied. My proposal you denied. Love swells like the Solway and ebbs like the tide. Solway would be a sea inlet that moves in a patch of sea, an inlet of sea that is there between Scotland and England. Typically Kelly imagined the sea, the rise and the fall, the high tide and the low tide. So what Lochinvar implies here is, I did love your daughter once, and now I don't anymore. Love like this always tide, love like high tide and low tide, goes through its ups and downs. I did love your daughter once, and now I don't. So then why have I come here? And now I am come with this lost love of mine. That's my reason why I'm here with this lost love of mine. I'm here. Why? To lead but one measure, to drink one cup of wine. Lead but one measure would mean to dance a bit and to drink some wine. That's the only purpose why I'm here, sir. And then he adds in this line too, there are maidens in Scotland more lovely by far that would gladly be bride to the young Lochinvar. And my dear sir, your daughter is not the only girl in Scotland who will fall for me. There are maidens in Scotland much lovely by far who will be willing to say yes to marry me. So don't think Ellen is the only girl who would consent to marry me. Look into the next line. The marriage ceremony is moving on quickly. Look into the traditional marriage ceremony. The bride will drink a cup of wine. She should be handing it over to the bridegroom, and the ceremony would be sealed by a dance. This is how weddings were held there. But look at how Lochinvar manages to twist the tale. The bride kissed the goblet. The knight took it up. He quaffed of the wine and he threw down the cup. She looked down to blush. She looked up to sigh. With a smile on her lips and a tear in her eye, he took her soft hand, ere her mother could bar. Now tread we a measure, said young Lochinvar. The bridegroom is there, the bride is there, the entire group of relatives are there. The ceremony has begun. The bride takes the cup of wine, sips it. Before she is able to hand it over to the bridegroom, what does Lochinvar do? Lochinvar takes it from her hand, quaffs off the entire wine, throws the cup on the floor, takes her hand and said, let's dance. Look into that, quaffed off. Quaffed, again an archaic word. Quaffed means to drink it quickly. He threw down the cup after that. She looks to blush. She does not know what to say. She does not know how to react. It's evident by her responses that she too did love this man and would do anything to marry him. But then she is caught. What does she do? She looks up to blush. Remember, blushing is when there is a flow of blood onto your face. There's an adrenaline rush. An opposite of blushing would be pale, where you have a blood drain from your face. Here, she does not expect this to happen. And out of shyness, she blushes. She looked down to blush. She looks up to sigh. Sigh would be a deep breath that comes from your soul. What do I do? With a smile on her lips and a tear in her eye, Ellen stood there, but not long before Lochinvar takes her hand and says, now tread we a measure. Dance with me. Dance a few steps with me. Before what? Ere her mother could bar. Ere her mother could bar means before her mother could stop her. Lochinvar says this, and she is not one to say no. So stately his form, so lovely her face. So stately, so stately his form, and so lovely her face, that never a hall such a galliard did grace. While her mother did fret, and her father did fume, and the bridegroom stood dangling his bonnet and plume, and the bridemaidens whispered, "To better by far to have matched our fair cousin with the young Lochinvar." Look into how things change there. The situation. Everyone is in a turmoil now. Lochinvar comes in so stately, so elegant, and Ellen stands there beautiful and lovely. The dance that they did that day at the Netherby Hall, such a galliard. Galliard, remember, is a Scottish popular dance. Such a galliard no other hall could ever claim to have. A beautiful, mesmerizing dance was what unfolded there between stately Lochinvar and the beautiful Ellen. When the dance was going on, the mother is fretting. Fretting means she's worried. And the father is fuming. He's fuming out of anger. So the mother's fear and the father's rage. When this is happening, on the other hand, slow whispers come from all sides. The bridesmaiden whisper to each other and say, "I wish our fair Ellen married this young man. Instead of that man, what is the bridegroom doing there all this while?" Bridegroom has his bonnet and his plumes. The bridegroom stood dangling his bonnet. Bonnet would be a cap, and the plume would be the thread that comes out of the cap. So what is he doing? He's twirling the plume, not knowing what to do next. He does not know how to respond to the situation. And the bridesmaiden look at this and say, "To better by far to have matched our fair cousin with a young Lochinvar." And from here, things progress quickly. One touch to her hand and one word in her ear. When they reached the hall door, the charger stood near. So light to the croup the fair lady he swung, so light to the saddle before he sprung. "She is won, we are gone, over bank, bush and score. They'll have fleet steeds that follow," quoth young Lochinvar. What happens very quickly. The dance progresses. They dance, reach the door. When they reach the door, hand in hand, music following them, outside the door stands the charger. Charger here would mean the horse. Outside the door stands Lochinvar's horse. What does Lochinvar do? He takes her lightly and puts her on to the horse. When they reached the hall door, the charger stood near. The charger would mean the horse stood near. What does he do there? He takes her very lightly, places her to the croup. Croup would be a place behind the saddle on the horse. Where you sit on the horse, that is what you mean by a saddle. Behind the horse would be what you mean by a croup. He takes her lightly, puts her behind her on the croup, swings on to the saddle and rides into the vast eternity. So light to the saddle before her he sprung. Before that, before he vanishes, he calls out something. "She is won. We are gone. Over bank, bush and score. They'll have fleet steeds that follow," quoth young Lochinvar. Quoth means said, young Lochinvar. Scour. Scour again means hill ranges, the eastern Scottish hill ranges. So before he leaves Netherby Hall, he calls out to the people who are there, she is one, she is mine, and before you can trace us, we would have disappeared. Over bank, bush, and score, we would have disappeared. There was mounting among the Grahams and the Netherby clan. Fosters and Fenwicks, Musgraves, they rode and they ran. There was racing and chasing on the Canterbury. But the lost pride of Netherby never did they see. So daring in love and so dauntless in war. Have you ever heard of a gallant like young Lochinvar? There was mounting among Grahams of the Netherby Hall. Those names that you have mentioned there, Grahams, Fosters, Fenwick, Musgraves, they were all upper class families in Scotland nearby Netherby Hall who had come there to attend the feast. When they see the bride being lifted off by a knight, they mounted their own horses and ran behind Lochinvar and Ellen. But no matter how much they searched up and down the lost bride of Netherby Hall, nobody ever found again. And here, look at the last two lines that the poet wants us to say. So daring in love and so dauntless in war, have you ever heard of a knight like the young Lochinvar? Now look into how the poet places an active and a passive binary here within those lines. When you look into this, Lochinvar is depicted as very, very active. He is dauntless, he is gallant, he is brave, he is stately, he is daring. And on the other hand, you have passive, fair, lovely, light, soft. All of these are the words that we have depicting Ellen. The bridegroom is also in a passive mode, laggard and dastard, one who stands there dangling his plume. So this binary you need to remember. The stereotypes are automatically built in by Lochinvar and Ellen and their description. And over here, remember that this is a brilliant poem that speaks of a beautiful love story.